So I got to tell you, folks, I think all of you probably heard about this controversy involving Netflix. Netflix has a new a release video called Cuties. And, great name. Who doesn't, Cuties sounds like maybe it's about puppies or, little animals in nature. Cuties is about an 11-year-old girl who is, and her other people of her age in the film, who want to become, allegedly someday want to become dancers. But what the film depicts is 11-year-old girls and girls around that age engaging in extremely graphic sexual imitation, graphic movements. Twerking is the term, one term used to describe what the girls are doing in this film. It is a film that truly horrified, as more people became aware about it in this country, horrified people that Netflix would be putting it out there and as though it was a great thing, a great accomplishment. And I want to mention talk about this on a variety of levels, because I actually think it's really, really important to think about in terms of preserving America. I tell you all the time, this show, America Can We Talk, is all about preserving America. I can talk, as you well know if you listen all the time, I can talk at great length about the importance of strong military and limited government and a secure border and appropriate standards for citizenship and tax rates. There are just dozens and dozens of relevant issues in America that people can talk about in terms of preserving America and shaping America's future. It's very easy for politicians, really in both parties, to steer clear of issues like the one involving Netflix. It's very easy, especially for conservatives. It's a safe territory to walk in to say, well, I stand for low taxes and limited government and a strong military and secure border. These are, red meat kind of topics for Republicans to stand for. But the issues raised by this Netflix film don't fall into one of those very comfortable categories. You have to be willing to talk about the danger and the existence of morality and the morals surrounding presenting 11-year-old children in a sexualized context, a sexualized message. I'm not going to play the trailer. I'm not going to play clips because I don't think that really helps the conversation. This film is a piece or a part or evidence of the problem we face in this country as we have the radical left in this country more and more pushing the envelope on the question of sexual morality. It's important to understand this because it is not just a film that happens to touch on certain behaviors or certain desires of a young girl to become a dancer. It is a film that touches on the idea. I'm so sorry, this is very distracting, and I'm going to do this right during the show. I'm going to move this clip around so it is not bumping my necklace. There, that'll be much better, I'm sure. Okay, so this is a film that is really truly about that raises the issue that matter to all of America, which is what kind of a culture do we have? Who decides cultural morality? Who has a say in cultural morality? And part of what happens, why all these very proud Republican conservatives don't speak up on issues like this, is because they know they will be pummeled, mocked, and ridiculed by the Twitter mob, by the leftists in this country, who simply will not tolerate conversation that tends to suggest there is such a thing as Christian morality or morality in general. It's just not comfortable for many politicians to go down this path. They stay in the safe lane, the non-passing lane, the safe lane of taxes, fund the military, have a strong military and a secure border. So I first want to give great credit to at least two Republicans who did speak up to talk about the disgusting nature of this film, to denounce Netflix for putting it out there. And those two politicians are, one, Senator Ted Cruz from the great state of Texas, my senator. Ted Cruz was out there early on talking about this movie and basically saying the movie sexualizes 11-year-old girls. It's a great term he uses, sexualizes 11-year-old girls. And he actually called for the Department of Justice to investigate Netflix, all the distributors, everyone involved with the film, on the question of whether they had violated federal child porn laws. We actually have fortunately in America still, child porn laws. It may be a question someday a judge will look at to decide, what the standards are and did what this movie depicts, what this film depicts, did it constitute child porn or not? That's a question for down the line. I just want to commend the very few people in politics and other places in life who are willing to speak up and say, this is unacceptable. We don't put child sex into Netflix and release it out to the world. And to be clear, it's not sexual intercourse. It's not sexual intimacy. It's just right on the edge of hinting at it and being alluring, and girls taught how to engage in very sexualized, suggestive dancing. So Ted Cruz spoke up and said he denounced the film. He suggested that we should have an investigation on this film called Cuties by Netflix. The other person who spoke up, and there may be others, and I'll give them credit too, the other one who spoke up right away was another Republican senator, Josh Hawley, who spoke up to say he just urged Netflix CEO Reed Hastings to have this platform take down the film. Just says it inappropriately sexualizes young girls. And he wrote a letter to Netflix, made his letter public, so he's willing to take a stand that in this country that we don't have sexualized films about 11-year-olds and try to pretend it is just simply just the next phase in our growing understanding of our sexuality, our growing understanding of pushing the norms, pushing the limits on films. He's saying, no, this doesn't belong anywhere here. God bless him, both him, Hawley, and Cruz. But I want to mention some other things, aspects about this film. Number one, it's put out by Netflix. You may remember that in 2018, former President Obama, Barack Obama, and his wife Michelle Obama signed a contract with Netflix for millions of dollars to promote films. So they're not on the board of Netflix, although Susan Rice, their longtime ally and buddy, is on the board of Netflix and could have spoken up about the content of this film. But she didn't. No damper put on there. And frankly, given the stature of the Obamas, if they had uttered one word to Netflix about not too sure this is a good idea, they, in my estimation, could have caused Netflix to say, okay, never mind. But they didn't do that. Again, it's easy for people to stand back, unless it's pure, flat out, sexual action by 5-year-olds. It's easy for people like the Obamas, like many Democrats, like many Republicans to say, well, I'm not going to talk about that. This falls in the arena of First Amendment issues, and I don't know how the porn law should be interpreted. I'm not too sure what should be right or wrong here, so I'm going to stay out of it. And this is a problem we have in America, because our culture, the famous statement by Andrew Breitbart that said politics is downstream from culture. As our culture becomes more sexualized, more debased, more disrespectful of women, it ultimately debases and degrades our whole country. There's nothing noble about standing up for for the right to have a movie that sexualizes the behavior of 11-year-olds, that has them twerking and engaging in imitation of sexual activity. This is not progress for mankind. This is not growing into a deeper and better understanding of America. This is nothing good. This is pure porn. Whether it meets the legal standard for porn, some court may decide someday, but the speaking up about it was a great example for Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, and an example on the left of complete dead silence. Silence. By all these people who say they care about the children. The left's always caring about children and caring about protecting children. But they're not really. Not when it involves this kind of perverse sexuality. They're too timid. They're too afraid of the LGBTQ crowd. They're too afraid of the Twitter mob to speak up on an important issue like this. But it matters in terms of shaping our culture, because once it's out there on Netflix, it becomes the new norm, the new lowered standard, the new reduced standard for what is appropriate, what is reasonable, what belongs in our culture, and will only go downward from there. So I really commend the people speaking up. And the last thing I want to make about it's a really important thing to think about in terms of what these people are saying, because the people who defend this kind of stuff, the people who, in fact, the person who was involved, she's either the producer or the writer, was saying, well, I did this because it kind of depicted my own thinking, as I was that age, what I thought about sexuality. I'm trying to just explore and open the door to more understanding. So it's justified as kind of intellectual, kind of, post-Christian morality, post-morality, post these old-fashioned, silly old Christians, and not just Christians, but people of many faiths who would say they don't really think we need to have 11-year-old girls depicting sexual conduct in films. But you have people defending it on some, claiming they're on some heightened, advanced intellectual level. They're smarter than we are. They're more advanced. They're post-Christianity, post-morality, and they very quickly, of course, mock people who are calling for Netflix to take this film down. So I really commend, as I said, Holly and Cruz. I really think that Michelle Obama and Barack Obama ought to tell America why they think it's okay that their company that they're heavily working with, that they're making millions from making films with, that their buddy Susan Rice says on the board, why are they okay with this? Is this really how they hope that the messaging to girls that comes from movies like this? But the last point I want to make about, and there is, by the way, plenty of ridicule out there of anyone criticizing the movie, even the Forbes magazine, which I have no idea what's happened to Forbes magazine. It used to be Steve Forbes thing. It used to be conservative. It's just over the cliff into radical leftism. They've lost their minds at Forbes, and they ran some opinion piece saying that any controversy over the Netflix film Cuties is totally ridiculous. But I want to finish one more really important point before I get to the next topic. What people argue in terms of supporting and enabling this kind of film is this idea that, as we move forward as a people, as a culture, as we continue to advance and we advance past, the ancient, old, silly biblical standards, we need to keep on thinking about what it is that empowers women and is, in fact, is part of the defense put forward by people defending this film. They're saying that sexuality in this particular film, some of the allusion is to pole dancing, strip teasing, the very sexually suggestive thing, that somehow having more women engage in and be okay with the idea of promiscuity and selling their sexuality, that somehow is empowering women. Another example, I talked last week one day about feminexit, another reason to reject the left's argument about femininity and being feminine, what it means to be a woman. There's nothing empowering, true, about the right idea of empowering women to say they're empowered, but when they can become more comfortable doing pole dancing, engaging in very sexual suggestive dancing in films, in public. That is not empowering of women. It's demeaning to women. It is demeaning to women. And the idea that people back in this film and say, no, this is advancing women, it's another indication of the sickness of the American left, not having a right sense of womanhood, not having a right sense of standing up for women, could not possibly be equated with sexualizing women and having women dance, display, be involved in more and more sexual, overtly sexual movies and entertainment, that somehow empowers women. It's an insult to the right idea of femininity, an insult to the right idea of being a woman and women being empowered to think you get empowered. We used to understand this. This is why we used to understand why sex workers, why prostitution was not empowering women to live in freedom. It was enslaving them. It was demeaning to them. That's the right idea of empowering women, is to dismiss that, reject it. Women are not empowered by being encouraged to cheer on 11-year-olds engage in sexual dancing in some film. That's not empowerment. That is denigrating them.